You've heard Russia mentioned 1,000 times, but how much of it do you really know? Bears hunt beneath volcanoes that never sleep. Mysterious villagers cling to the shadows of stone giants. And every religion has left its mark, carved in stone and crowned in gold. This is Russia, a continent disguised as a country. Let's explore the side the news will never show you. At Russia's eastern edge, the world still feels unfinished. The Earth reshaping itself. Predators testing survival. And men carving cities from ice. This is Russia at its rawest. Kamchatka Peninsula, where the Pacific Ring of Fire meets Siberian ice. Where the Earth never quite decided to settle down. "29 volcanoes breathe smoke into Arctic air. Some mornings you can count 5 eruptions from a single viewpoint. Kluchevskaya Sopka rises nearly 5,000 meters, taller than anything in the Alps, and it hasn't truly gone quiet in 6,000 years. The land is never finished. Craters open overnight. Lava spreads like slow floods. Ash repaints the tundra in shades of black and grey. This is geology still in motion. Tolbachik's lava glows orange against the snow. Mutnovsky vents sulphurous steam from a crater lake that shouldn't be liquid at all. Gorley smoulders quietly as it has for decades. Below, in the Valley of Geysers, boiling water shoots through permafrost. Only Yellowstone matches this concentration of thermal fury. Mud volcanoes bubble alongside the steam vents, grey pools that belch and heave like the earth breathing. For decades, even Russians needed permits to enter. Cold War secrecy holding nature under lock and key. Avacha Bay breaks the coast, a volcanic amphitheatre facing the Pacific. Rock spires rise from the water like sentinels carved by eruptions that never stopped. Each autumn in these waters, the salmon return. Millions of them fighting upstream through rapids and shallows. And waiting at the rivers, 20,000 brown bears. The densest population on Earth. More bears than people in most districts. A mother stands in the current with her cubs. 800 pounds of patience, watching, waiting. There, one swipe, breakfast pinned against the rocks. The cubs watch on. Soon they will have to fish for themselves. A massive male appears upstream. The mother herds her cubs to safety. Best to let him fish alone. But not every bear is so diplomatic. Two males rear up in the current, roaring, teeth bared. The river is thick with fish, but it isn't about food. It's dominance. The clash is brief, the outcome inevitable. Both leave with salmon anyway. The fight was just for show. By October, the bears are fattened. Half their weight gained in weeks, enough to sleep until spring. The salmon make it possible. Every year, they return. Out in the bay, sea lions sprawl across volcanic rocks. Dozens of them, barking, sunning themselves, unbothered. Today, they're safe. The orcas cruising past the headland have found different prey. A young porpoise, alone, already exhausted. They don't strike straight away. They circle. They toy with it. A tail flick launches it skyward, spinning. Another strike. The body cartwheels like a rag doll. Out here, at the edge of the continent, every predator has perfected their craft. As we head inland into the expansive forests, a new hunter appears. Orange and black stripes sliding through snow. The Siberian tiger, the largest cat on Earth. "300 kilos of muscle capable of sprinting through forest like a bullet. A wild boar doesn't last seconds. In the 1940s, there were 40 left. Today, perhaps 600 roam. Each rules territory the size of a city. Solitary, apex, a species pulled back from the edge of vanishing. Where forest meets sea, a city rises from the mist. Vladivostok, Russia's window on the Pacific. A bay shaped like Istanbul, ambitions shaped by Moscow. The Ruski Bridge stretches 3 kilometers across the strait. It is the longest cable-stayed span on the planet. An engineering declaration. Russia reaches the Pacific and means to stay. At the harbour entrance, Tokarevsky Lighthouse stands watch, red and white stripes against grey skies. A century old, still guiding ships through some of the most strategic waters on Earth. Nuclear submarines break the surface in formation. Ballistic carriers linger beneath, unseen. The docks hold rows of grey warships, destroyers and frigates standing silent, waiting for orders that may never come. Artillery drills echo across the bay on training days. The entire apparatus of a military that never quite stopped preparing. But when winter reaches Vladivostok, everything changes. The bay freezes. The harbour locks in ice. And the icebreakers emerge. Massive bows designed to crush their way through. The ships rock forward, ride up onto the ice, use their weight to crack it open, again and again, carving channels for the fleet to move. Even in the coldest months, these waters stay open. The Pacific Fleet operates year-round. Beluga whales sometimes follow the ships into the bay, curious about the machinery, unbothered by the submarines and destroyers sharing their waters. Russia built Vladivostok as their Pacific gateway, their answer to San Francisco. North of everything lies Chukotka. The land empties here, villages scattered across tundra like afterthoughts. More reindeer than people, more ice than either. Here the land ends. 85 kilometers of water and then America. Close enough to see, but a world apart. Russia at its rawest. Land unstable. Predators dominant. People enduring on the edge of nothing. Staring across the water at another world. From the Pacific edge, we leap all the way across Russia, landing in Moscow, the capital. It's hard to believe that this is the same country at all. Every empire builds its capital to reflect its soul. Moscow reveals Russia's a city that keeps rebuilding itself, refusing to choose between past and future. Glass towers pierce the skyline. Onion domes catch morning light between corporate headquarters. The Живописный Bridge cuts a red arc across the Moskva River, bold as blood, modern as tomorrow. Traffic pulses through 12-lane highways where Napoleon's army once retreated through snow. This is Europe's largest city, 13 million people. A skyline of glass and ambition rising over 9 centuries of history. Yet every tower still stands in the shadow of something older. The word Kremlin just means fortress. Almost every old Russian town has one. But Moscow's became the heart that pumps power through the nation's veins. "900 years ago, this was just a wooden fort in a swamp. A minor outpost of the town of Suzdal. Today, Suzdal sleeps peacefully 200 kilometers away. 33 churches for 11,000 people. They call it Russia's spiritual museum. White stone monasteries that once held more power than palaces. The Trinity Lavra at Sergiev Posad still draws pilgrims like it has for 6 centuries. Russia's Vatican, where Tsars came to pray before coronations. Before Moscow rose, the city of Vladimir ruled. Its white stone Assumption Cathedral became the blueprint for Moscow's ambitions. The Virgin of Vladimir icon once hung here, credited with saving Moscow from 3 different invasions. Strange to think, Moscow started as Vladimir's subordinate. Stranger still how it rose, not through military might, but by collecting taxes for the Mongol horde. The princes of Moscow got rich as middlemen, turned collaboration into domination, By the time the Mongols weakened, Moscow had grown strong enough to claim all of Russia. Beyond Moscow, faith shaped an entire ring of cities. Yaroslavl's painted cathedrals, Kostroma's white spires, Smolensk's blue domes, the vast New Jerusalem monastery built to mirror the Holy Land itself. A constellation of devotion circling the rising capital. Faith had built Moscow's foundations. Ambition built everything that came after. Inside the Kremlin walls, 3 centuries of coronations played out in the same cathedral, from Ivan the Terrible to Nicholas the Last. The great imperial crown holds nearly 5,000 diamonds. Now it sits in the Kremlin Armory, power-turned museum piece. Just outside, the Tsar cannon and Tsar bell still guard the square, masterpieces of bronze and pride. Both among the largest ever cast, yet neither ever served their purpose. One never fired a shot, the other cracked before it could ring. St. Basil's Cathedral twists toward heaven in ways that shouldn't work. 9 chapels spiraling around a central core. Legend says Ivan the Terrible blinded its architects so they could never build anything more beautiful. Probably myth. But in Russia, the myths sometimes tell deeper truths than facts. The Bolshoi Theatre still performs the same ballets it once staged for Tsars. Swan Lake beneath chandeliers that never stopped shining, no matter who ruled beneath them. In 1917, the revolution itself was announced from this stage, the empire falling, but the curtain never really dropping. The domes that once glittered with gold would soon glow red under new stars. Power changed costume, not its nature. In Red Square, the Soviet Union's first leader, Vladimir Lenin, still lies in glass. A century-old promise of eternity that became its own museum piece. Above the square, the Kremlin's eagles vanished one October night in 1935. Ruby stars appeared by morning. 5 tons of socialist symbolism, still glowing every night. The monarchy erased between sunset and dawn. The Seven Sisters rise like Gothic warnings across the skyline. Former Soviet leader Joseph Stalin ordered them built to outshine Manhattan. Moscow State University looks like Gotham City rendered in limestone. 36 floors of Soviet ambition. Inside, 11 Nobel Prize winners studied. Outside, it still looks like it's waiting for Batman. Beneath Moscow, Stalin built a metro like no other, chandeliers and marble halls celebrating the workers' paradise. It was propaganda in motion, a daily reminder that communism could rival any empire in beauty and ambition. But the Cold War changed its purpose. The same tunnels that carried millions to work were also meant to protect them from a war that never came. Built in an age when paranoia ran deep between the Soviet Union and the United States. Yuri Gagarin watches over Leninsky Avenue, the first human to leave Earth, cast in 40 meters of titanium. In 1961, his flight turned fear into pride. The Soviet Union had beaten America to space. For a moment, the sky itself seemed proof that the system worked. Today, that legacy still orbits Moscow. The Cosmonaut Museum and VDNKH's Space Pavilion preserve the age of rockets and wonder. Silver spires, engines and capsules gleaming beneath glass. A city still looking upward, even as the ground keeps shifting beneath it. Decades later, Gagarin's statue still gleams, a reminder of how far ambition can reach and how quickly it can fade. When darkness falls, Moscow transforms again. The same monuments, lit from below, tell different stories. Ostankino Tower broadcasts state television while changing colours like a mood ring. The Kremlin walls glow gold against black water. Corporate logos compete with church crosses for skyline supremacy. The city that was once the communist paradise now tries on capitalism like an expensive suit that doesn't quite fit. Moscow doesn't erase its past. It builds on top of it, preserves it in glass cases, lights it up at night. A city of accumulated power where every monument argues with the next about what Russia really means. Moscow may be the capital, but it's the Volga that carries Russia's soul. Flowing south, it leads us into the frontier where Europe fades and Asia begins. The Volga doesn't flow through Russia. Russia flows through the Volga. Europe's longest river, 3,500 kilometres of history in motion. Vikings once sailed these waters south to Persia. Stalin moved entire factories here during the war. Today, freedivers slip beneath the surface into water clearer than glass. Shafts of blue light slicing through limestone caverns that shouldn't exist. The earth opens below them in impossible colours, as if the planet hid another world beneath its skin. They call her Mother Volga. The name fits. She's fed Russia through famines and wars, carried its dead to the Caspian. Every major moment in Russian history has touched these waters. Kazan rises from the riverbank like Russia's strangest compromise. Inside the same Kremlin walls, a mosque and a cathedral face each other. 5 daily calls to prayer, Orthodox bells at sunrise, both claiming the same sky. This is where Russia stopped being purely Slavic, where it became something more complex. In 1552, Ivan the Terrible took this city in blood. Tens of thousands dead, mosques burned, survivors forcibly baptized. The moment Muscovy became an empire. Upstream from Kazan lies Sviazhsk, the fortress that made the conquest possible. Built in just 4 weeks from prefabricated timber, assembled piece by piece like a weapon aimed at the city. When the siege ended, the fortress became a monastery. White walls replaced siege engines. Faith rose where fire once burned. The Millennium Bridge sweeps across the river like a taut bowstring, pointing toward the future. The wedding palace, shaped like a giant cauldron, looks half temple, half spaceship, a symbol of how Kazan keeps blending old faiths with new designs. The Temple of All Religions looks like a fever dream. Minaret, onion dome, pagoda, pyramid all sprouting from one building. As if someone couldn't decide which god to please, so they built for all of them. The Volga has seen faith and empire rise along its banks, but further south, it remembers only blood. The Motherland Calls statue doesn't ask for your attention. It demands it. "85 meters of concrete fury, taller than the Statue of Liberty. heavier than the Eiffel Tower, a sword raised against a sky that once rained Nazi bombs. This was Stalingrad, the battle that broke Hitler's spine. Over 1 million dead in 5 months, bodies frozen into defensive positions, every building a fortress, every room a battlefield. "27 million Soviets died in that war. No nation bled more." The statue's face doesn't show grief, it shows rage. Still calling her children to fight an enemy that surrendered 80 years ago. The Volga once carried armies. Now it carries oil, another kind of power, another kind of conquest. Tatarstan alone pumps hundreds of thousands of barrels a day. Forests give way to pump jacks, riverside plains to refineries the size of cities. The night glows orange from flares that never go out. Bashkortostan adds its own roar. Oil, gas, chemicals, metals, a belt of industry stretching from the Volga to the Urals. Its capital, Ufa, sits between poetry and petroleum. The monument to Salavat Yuliyev rears above the city, a bronze symbol of rebellion and pride, while beneath it, pipelines carry what truly binds this region: carbon and ambition. Above it all, a handful of oligarchs pull the strings, men who turned oil and steel into kingdoms and wealth into power. Further east in the Chelyabinsk region, the furnaces of Satka still burn, iron and steel pouring day and night into the same fires. For over 2 centuries, these flames have forged Russia's backbone. Its engines, its rails, its tanks. But in 2013, fire came from above instead of below. A meteor tore over Satka and Chelyabinsk, exploding with more force than Hiroshima. Windows shattered. 1,000 people were injured by flying glass. Every dashboard camera caught the same blinding streak. A piece of the cosmos, reminding Russia that some power still burns brighter than its own. Just south of Chelyabinsk, Russia listens for echoes of that same sky. The Ratan 600 radio telescope spreads across a mountain valley. A perfect circle, 600 meters wide, its panels turn toward the heavens. Built in the 1970s, it was the Soviet Union's ear to the universe, scanning quasars, pulsars, the faint hum of creation itself. Beyond all of the industry, the land begins to rise. The factories fade, and the Urals take over. Russia's spine of stone, holding up everything built on top of it. A bridge at Orenburg marks where Europe ends, or Asia begins. Depends which way you're walking. The Ural Mountains, 2,000 kilometers of argument about where one continent becomes another. These aren't just mountains, they're Russia's treasure vault. Every metal that matters hides in this rock. Iron, copper, platinum, gold. Stalin's tanks rolled on Ural steel. The Soviet atomic program was born in these valleys. But not everything here was mined or forged. Beneath the surface, the Kunga ice caves stretch for miles, frozen rivers of crystal and air. Stalactites hang like glass organs above subterranean lakes. The Manpupina rocks rise like 7 giants turned to stone. Local legend says they were warriors, frozen mid-battle. Geology says they're weathered pillars. Neither explanation satisfies when you see them up close, wrapped in ice and snow. In the surrounding wilderness, Ural owls hunt without sound. Herds of wild horses drift across open meadows. Even here, in the shadow of secrecy, the land keeps its own rhythm, untouched by human plans. But older mysteries sleep here too. The Shigir idol stood in a peat bog for 12,000 years, twice as old as the pyramids, covered in symbols no one can read. Beyond the ridges, the mountains soften into forests. Waterfalls slice through pine and birch. Rivers cut silver paths through moss valleys. For a few moments, the Urals stop feeling mysterious and start feeling alive. And then there's the Dyatlov Pass, where a group of 9 hikers vanished in 1959 under circumstances no one can fully explain. Their tent was discovered high in the snow, cut open from the inside. Some were found miles away, barefoot, as if fleeing something unseen. Others showed injuries too severe to match a storm. No sign of struggle, no clear cause. Investigators listed it simply as the work of an unknown compelling force. Decades later, new theories keep emerging. Avalanche, infrasound, secret tests, but none fit perfectly. The wind still moves through the Dyatlov Pass, carrying a mystery that refuses to rest. The Urals hold Russia's oldest secrets and its hardest truths, carved into mountains that never forget. But to the south, the Caucasus tested its strength, a frontier of fierce peoples and endless conflict. The road to Sochi cuts through mountains, then suddenly, subtropical coastline. Beach resorts backed by snow-capped peaks. Like someone transplanted the Riviera to the edge of Siberia. This is where Moscow comes to forget about winter. The 2014 Olympics cost $50 billion here. It was the most expensive games ever staged. Ski jumps visible from beaches, ice rinks cooled while palm trees swayed outside. Beyond Sochi, the Black Sea bends toward Crimea, Russia's most disputed territory. It's impossible to tell this story without crossing that line. What follows is geography, not politics, a look at the land itself. The Crimean Bridge stretches 19 kilometres across waters that don't want to be bridged. Europe's longest span, built to last a century in a place where nothing stays settled that long. The swallow's nest clings to its cliff like a castle from a fairy tale that took a wrong turn. Built for a German oil baron, claimed by Soviets, photographed by millions. Greeks, Romans, Mongols, Ottomans, Russians. Every empire that mattered has planted a flag here. In 2014, the peninsula changed hands again. What Russia calls reunification, much of the world calls annexation. The arguments continue. The landscape endures. At Yalta, 3 men divided the world in 1945. Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, carving up the planet in a palace by the sea. Ironic that a place dedicated to dividing the world is itself so divided. As we move further along the coast, Russia really starts to feel more like the Riviera. White cliffs, turquoise bays, streets built for sunlight. Sevastopol and Balaclava, harbours shaped by the past, selling views in the present. The hills behind Crimea are just a preview. The real mountains lie further east. Mount Elbrus rises higher than anything else in Europe. Two peaks, 5,600 meters of volcanic rock and ice. The mountain sits exactly where continents meet, Europe and Asia, Christianity and Islam, empires that came and went while Elbrus just stood there. Dormant for 2,000 years. But not extinct. 22 glaciers wrap the double summit. Ice that's been flowing since before borders existed, before anyone cared which continent claimed which mountain. Below, over 50 ethnic groups call these valleys home. Dagestan speaks 30 languages. Some villages have their own alphabet that neighbouring villages can't read. Stone towers rise from cliffsides, fortresses built when survival meant watching the valley floor from above. More world-class fighters emerge from these valleys than from countries 100 times larger. Perhaps the mountains demand it. Ingushetia's medieval towers still line the ridges. Family keeps built for defence, still standing centuries later. Kabardino-Balkaria stretches from alpine meadows to peaks that scrape 6,000 metres. valleys where horses still outnumber cars, where ancient traditions persist not out of nostalgia, but necessity. The Sulik Canyon cuts deeper than the Grand Canyon, just nobody knows about it. 2,000 meters down, eagles nest below where you stand. And where the Caucasus meets the Caspian shore, another giant sleeps. The Lune-class Ekranoplan, half ship, half plane, the last of its kind. Built in the 1980s to skim just meters above the waves, carrying missiles faster than radar could react. At Dargavs, the city of the dead watches from its hillside. Stone crypts built like tiny houses. When plague came, the infected walked here to die, sealing themselves inside to protect the living. Some doors have never been opened. Stranger still, scattered through these valleys, massive stone dolmens predate the pyramids. No one knows who built them or why. 3,000-year-old mysteries. This is the Caucasus. Cultures, languages, histories that refuse to blend, shaped by mountains that make isolation easy and unity impossible. Northwest, where the mountains give way to grassland, sits Europe's only Buddhist republic. The Golden Temple rises from flatlands like a geographic mistake. Gold leaf catching light across steppes that stretch to every horizon. Prayer wheels spin in winds that started somewhere far east of here. The Kalmyks arrived as Mongol cavalry in the 1600s, stayed as Russia's Buddhist anomaly, brought their faith with them and refused to let it go, built temples, maintained traditions, survived Stalin's attempts to erase both. Saiga antelopes with inflatable noses wander steppes that could be Central Asia. These bizarre-looking survivors, part antelope, part alien, somehow ended up in Europe's only Buddhist republic. As we journey east from Kalmykia, the flatlands give way to the Altai, a convergence point for Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan. The Altai doesn't make sense as a single place. It's a patchwork. Steppe, glacier, desert, forest. Buddhist shrines near Orthodox monasteries. Kazakh herders sharing valleys with Russian villages. Geology that looks like it was assembled from spare parts. Rainbow mountains stripe the horizon. Red oxide, green copper, yellow sulfur. A geological sunset frozen in stone. Nearby, a mining train cuts across pink salt lakes, dark metal against pastel water. The minerals stain everything: rocks, birds, boots. Even the air tastes of salt and metal. Stone mushrooms rise from the ridgelines, rock balanced on rock, defying gravity for millennia. The Katun River runs turquoise through it all, too blue to look real. Patmos Island sits mid-river, connected by a swaying bridge. Orthodox monks chose this spot. Even holy men appreciate dramatic real estate. In Denisova Cave, a single bone revealed a new kind of human, the Denisovans, who once lived here and still live on in our DNA. This is the edge, where the steppe finally gives up, where Siberia begins, not cleanly, but in a chaotic convergence of everything that came before. Novosibirsk exists because trains need to stop somewhere. The Trans-Siberian Railway, 9,200 kilometers of steel wheel, needed a crossing point at the Ob River. So they built a city. Now 2 million people live where the railway told them to. The Ob drains an area larger than Western Europe. By the time it reaches Novosibirsk, it's a kilometer wide. The bridge that crosses it carries the dreams and nightmares of a continent. Every train that passes connects Moscow to Vladivostok. Eight time zones, 87 cities, 7 consecutive days on the same train. Every summer, Novosibirsk hosts one of Russia's largest air shows. Fighter jets carve through Siberian skies. Crowds gather to watch Su-30s and MiG-29s perform maneuvers that physics barely allows. The Yenisei River splits Siberia in half. West of it, you're still in Europe's shadow. East of it, you enter something else entirely. The Krasnoyarsk Dam holds back the Yenisei with 10 million tons of concrete. Inside, turbines the size of buildings spin river into electricity, enough power for the entire region. The reservoir stretches so far it has its own weather system. Built over 16 brutal Siberian winters, it's a monument to endurance as much as engineering. In Agaki Natural Park, granite peaks pierce the clouds, jagged ridges carved by ice and time. Turquoise lakes nestle between spires that dwarf everything human. The scale makes you feel insignificant, a necessary reminder in a country this large. Stand on top of one of these peaks and look down 400 meters of sheer granite. Some climbers make that ascent without ropes, free soloing, just hands, feet, and absolute commitment. The Yenisei divides western Siberia from eastern, the familiar from the truly remote. As we cross it heading east, the conditions change dramatically. Temperatures that make Moscow winters look gentle. Ground frozen solid year-round. Forests so dense you could walk for weeks without seeing another human. This is where Siberia earns its reputation. Lake Baikal stretches to the horizon like an inland sea. 20% of the planet's fresh water, older than most mountain ranges, deeper than any other lake, 1,600 meters down to a bottom that's never seen sunlight. On Olcon Island, Shaman Rock rises from waters the Buriat people have called sacred for 1,000 years. One of Asia's 9 holy sites. Prayer ribbons flutter from every tree, bright against snow and stone. The shamans say the lake has a soul. Beneath the surface, Baikal seals hunt, the only freshwater seals on Earth. How they reach this lake, 3,000 kilometers from any ocean, remains a mystery. Then winter arrives. The lake freezes solid. Ice so clear you can read through a metre of it. Methane bubbles freeze mid-rise, creating galaxies of white spheres suspended in crystal. Cracks catch sunlight, turn it turquoise, throw it back like nature's stained glass. Artists carve horses from the frozen surface, build temples of ice that stand until spring. Photographers lie flat, shooting straight down through transparent floors to the abyss below. The frozen lake becomes a training ground. Ice skaters glide across what looks like glass, kilometres of uninterrupted surface. Cross-country skiers carve tracks that stretch to the horizon, using the lake as the world's largest practice arena. Others bring vehicles. Cars and trucks drive across ice roads that exist 3 months a year. Vehicles crossing water deep enough to swallow skyscrapers. Then, cutting across the frozen expanse, hovercraft. Half flying, half gliding, The only machines that don't care if the ice is 1 metre thick or 1 centimetre. They move over frozen lake and open water with equal indifference. But the lake has teeth. The summer winds descend from the mountains without warning. 200 kilometers per hour. Clear sky to hurricane in 2 hours. Strong enough to uproot trees, rip roofs from houses, sink ships. Anyone on the ice when they hit is at the lake's mercy. Further east, they would consider these conditions mild. Welcome to Oymyakon, minus 68 degrees Celsius, the coldest inhabited place on Earth. Here, the cold shapes everything. How you build, how you bury your dead, how you start your car. Engines run 24 hours all winter. Turn it off and it becomes ice. This region is Yakutia, bigger than Argentina, 90% permafrost. Mammoth remains emerge from riverbanks, blood still liquid after thousands of years. Scientists extract DNA with technology now available for resurrection. If mammoths return from extinction, Yakutia's cold will be the reason. The Road of Bones stretches 2,000 kilometres across the far northeast. In summer it looks almost peaceful. Gravel, rivers, endless green hills. But beneath it lies one of the darkest legacies in Russian history. Built by Gulag prisoners during Stalin's rule, the Kolyma Highway cost more lives than anyone can count. When men died from exhaustion or cold, they were buried in the embankment. The road itself became their grave. At the abandoned gulags, watchtowers still stand. Barbed wire rusts but doesn't disappear. The permafrost keeps the barracks from rotting completely. But Siberia's cruelty also birthed its wealth. The Mirny diamond mine gapes so wide that helicopters can't fly over. The downdraft would swallow them. From space it looks like the Earth's eye, unblinking. A quarter of the world's diamonds come from Yakutia. every engagement ring potentially carrying a piece of this frozen hell. When summer finally arrives, it feels like a miracle. For a few short weeks, the tundra blooms, rivers thaw, and people dance. The Yakut celebrate it with Yiyak, a festival of sun, horses, and renewal. After months of silence, the land fills again with music, colour, and life. When the permafrost melts, the Earth collapses. The Batagaika crater grows wider every year. Locals call it the gateway to hell. A kilometre wide, 100 metres deep, exposing 200,000 years of climate history in its walls. As the ice retreats, the leaner pillars emerge from the thaw. 500 million years old, their faces clearing of snow overnight. Limestone towers carved by water and time. Beautiful from a distance. Up close, they're sheer walls. No way up, no way through. Russia's coastline stretches 37,000 kilometres. Most of it faces north toward the Arctic Ocean. We now head toward that coast, a shoreline few know much about and even fewer will ever see. "270,000 people live in Murmansk, north of the Arctic Circle, in permanent darkness for half the year. The largest city where cities shouldn't exist. The port never freezes. Gulf Stream waters keep it open while everything else locks in ice. During World War II, Allied convoys unloaded here, the lifeline that kept Russia fighting. The Lenin, the world's first nuclear icebreaker, sits at the dock now. An hour away, Tereberka might be the strangest town in the Arctic. Flowers bloom across the tundra. Ships rot on the shore, abandoned decades ago. Surfers ride waves in the Arctic Ocean. Above, the northern lights right across the sky, green curtains rippling like they're alive. The aurora doesn't care if humans are watching. It performs for empty tundra just the same. Freedivers descend into forests of kelp, brown tangles swaying in Arctic current. The water is so cold it feels like it's burning. Visibility stretches forever. Not much survives down here to cloud the view. Further along the coast, the land empties even further. The Nenets named this peninsula well. Yamal means end of the world. Reindeer move across the tundra in their thousands. Herded by families who followed these routes for generations. Yurts dot the landscape, temporary homes that move with the herd. A child watches the reindeer, learning what their parents learned, what their grandparents learned. How to read the animals, where they'll go, when to move. Life here is defined by motion. The herds dictate everything. Where you sleep, when you eat, how far you travel. 50 moves a year, sometimes more. This is one of the last places where nomadic life continues as it has for centuries. Not as recreation, not as tourism, but as necessity. Further north, where even the Nenets don't travel, lies Franz Josef Land, an archipelago of 192 islands locked in ice for most of the year. Russian territory in name only, nature's territory in practice. Polar bears greatly outnumber humans here. They hunt across the ice, patient and enormous. 1,000 pounds of apex predator in a landscape where everything else is prey. Walruses haul out on rocky shores by the hundreds, tusks gleaming. The sound of them rolls across the Arctic, deep, ancient, and unmistakable. This is the edge, where Russia finally runs out, where the ice takes over completely. From the Arctic's edge, we descend through Karelia. The snow begins to melt as we move down Russia's European border. This region's marble quarries carved stone for one of Russia's most spectacular icons, which we will be seeing soon. On Lake Onega, Kijipogos defies everything you think you know about architecture. 22 wooden domes spiraling toward heaven, built without a single nail in the structure itself, just interlocking logs and wooden pegs. The roofs were nailed, but everything else held together by precision. The Church of the Transfiguration looks like it grew from the earth rather than being built on it. 300 years of Baltic storms and it still stands. A miracle made of pine. Before St. Petersburg existed, Veliki Novgorod ruled the north, Russia's first democracy, where merchants voted and princes served at the city's pleasure. Moscow crushed it eventually, but for 5 centuries Novgorod proved Russia could face west without an emperor's command. Russia's next window to the west took the opposite approach. Not democracy, but absolute power. In 1703, Peter the Great stood in a swamp where the Neva River meets the Baltic Sea, the westernmost edge of his empire, the closest point to Europe. He declared it would become Russia's future. First came the fortress. Peter laid the first stones himself, a military stronghold before there was a city to protect. The Peter and Paul Cathedral rises from within its walls, spire reaching 123 metres, golden and impossible. It was the highest point in St. Petersburg by imperial decree. Nothing was allowed to rise above it. The fortress became a prison, then a tomb. Every Russian emperor since Peter lies here. The city, built on corpses, ruled from a fortress buried in gold. He imported architects from Italy, engineers from Holland, stone from across the Baltic, ordered palaces that mimicked Versailles, built canals that froze solid half the year. The city was designed to mimic Europe's finest. The Bronze Horseman watches over it all. Catherine the Great commissioned it, but it's Peter's spirit. His horse rears over a serpent, chaos defeated, Russia moving forward. The 1,200-ton granite base is one of the largest stones ever moved by humans. Legend says as long as the statue stands, the city survives. And it's certainly been tested. Palace Square opens like a stage set for empire. The Winter Palace curves along one side, baroque in green and gold, stretching endlessly along the Neva. At the square's centre, the Alexander Column rises 47 metres. A single piece of granite. No supports, no foundation anchors. Inside the palace, 3 million artworks fill the Hermitage. Rembrandt's, Da Vinci's. More paintings than any museum on Earth. To see each piece for 1 minute would take 11 years. The Romanovs collected beauty like they collected territories, compulsively, competitively, without limit. "25 kilometres south, Catherine Palace announces itself in blue and white and impossible gold. Inside, the amber room once glowed like captured sunlight. 6 tons of amber panels carved from fossilized resin, warm, translucent, alive with light. Then World War II arrived. The Nazis dismantled it, packed it in crates, shipped it to Germany. It was never seen again. They've rebuilt it from photographs, but locals know it's not the real thing. St. Isaac's Cathedral took 40 years to complete. Remember that marble from Karelia? This is where it ended up. Columns hauled from Finland. The dome, gilded with nearly 200 pounds of gold. Neoclassical architecture at its most ambitious. The proportions, the symmetry, the sheer scale. This building influenced the design of the US Capitol. Russian grandeur exported westward, full circle. But this city of palaces and gold would soon face its darkest chapter. In 1941, Nazi Germany surrounded Leningrad, St. Petersburg under its Soviet name. Hitler's orders were simple: starve the city into submission, no ground assault, no occupation, just encirclement and waiting. The siege lasted 872 days, 2.5 years. Food ran out within months, then fuel, then hope. Winter temperatures dropped to -30. The city of 3 million became a graveyard. Bodies left in streets because no one had the strength to bury them. Entire families died in their apartments, frozen where they sat. The only lifeline was the road of life, A supply route across frozen Lake Ladoga. Trucks drove across ice, dodging German planes. Many fell through. The convoys kept coming anyway, every night, all winter for 3 winters. 500,000 evacuated. Supplies trickled in, but never enough. At Piskaryevskoye Cemetery, 500,000 lie in mass graves. Mothers, children, soldiers, all buried together. The memorial flame burns eternally, not for victory, but for endurance. They say over 1 million died. Some estimates go higher. The siege broke in 1944, but the city never fully recovered from what it endured. Every January 27th, fireworks explode over the Neva, not for New Year, but for the end of the siege. The day in 1944 when the last German shell fell. St. Petersburg became Leningrad under Soviet rule, survived the siege as Leningrad, then outlasted the Soviets to become St. Petersburg again. The Church of the Saviour on Spilled Blood rises where Alexander II was assassinated. 7,000 square meters of mosaics inside, each tile a prayer or a curse, built on blood, named for blood, too beautiful for its origin story. The Lacta Centre spears into the sky, Europe's tallest building, 460 metres of glass and ambition. From the top, you can see Finland on clear days. Peter's window to Europe became a watchtower. The city still stands, Peter's impossible dream, Catherine's golden galleries, Lenin's revolution, Hitler's target, all of it surviving into an age of skyscrapers and modernity. This is Russia, too vast for any single story. "11 time zones, from Pacific volcanoes to Baltic shores, Buddhist temples in Europe, surfers in the Arctic. Every kilometre another contradiction. The headlines show you Moscow's power and St. Petersburg's beauty. Red Square, the Kremlin, the spectacle of empire. But beneath it all, the land endures. The volcanoes keep erupting. The rivers keep flowing. And the cold keeps returning every winter without fail. You've seen how brutal nature can be in Russia. But what happens when the harshness is man-made? Click now and see how Tasmania transformed from a prison into a paradise.